Welcome to this study on management versus leadership. You've heard this topic several times, talked about in different ways, in different dimensions, but today I am going to be taking you through a number of texts and what a number of thought leaders have defined management or leadership to be, ranging from the Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide with hundreds of people contributing to this book, going to Plunket, Attner, and Allen, and even some quotes from John C. Maxwell and Tom Peters. When you hear the word management, what comes to your mind is my question. Management often has an angular and oblique feeling to it. It sounds a little bit sharp on the edges and a little bit precise compared to leadership that sounds a little bit more robust to start with, a little bit more round and easy to grasp, perhaps a little bit friendlier. Why is that? The reason is, in industry of management of organizations, the word leadership once upon a time was seldom used compared to management. That is why you often hear the word manager, manager. Who's your manager? Who's your line manager? Very rarely do you hear people say, who is your leader? Not because the word leader is so dramatic, but rather because for a very long time, the word management has been a catch-all for bundling people into a room, beating them over the head with a stick, or even the true essence of becoming a servant leader. And people for a long time have not been able to divide one from the other until very recently. So the word management often lends a sharp tone, feared by some, welcomed by the managers themselves. And leadership has often been thrown around as, oh, it's part of management. No, not at all. We are going to explore this from end to end. So get yourself a cup of coffee or drink, because we will be spending the next 20 minutes talking about this topic. First of all, I would like to define what exactly management is in the dictionary. Dictionary definition of management: the process of dealing with, or, watch this, controlling things or people. My goodness, what a definition. No wonder we are so fearful of the word management is on your case. Management is onto something. Because it lends itself to control. Those of you managers, you may be leaders. So let me finish, because you very well might be both a manager and a leader. And before I go any further, let me say that management and leadership are not at war with each other. However, there does need to be a balance. If there is no balance, that is when one becomes unfriendly and not as helpful as it could be when balanced with the other. So the definition of management: the process of dealing with or controlling things or people. No wonder people say project managers are control freaks, because the word management has for a very long time meant the process of dealing with or controlling things or people. And that is absolutely correct, because controlling people is not the same thing as leading people. We do not want to manage people. We want to manage things that concern people. We want to manage processes that surround people for their own good. We want to manage systems and procedures that govern how people behave and interact for their own good. So when you hear the word management, it is important to always deflect it to non-humans. When you think of management, you need to be thinking of managing systems, processes, procedures, endeavors, not people. And this could make a huge difference in how people manage versus lead. Management is also a word used to describe people in charge of running a company or organization. And that's why when people hear management, they often get freaked out. Still along the lines of what is in the dictionary, management is also the responsibility for and control of a company or similar organization. So that is one perspective to management. Let's read a very enlightening text here from Plunket, Attner, and Allen. It's one of my favorite management books. And I'll just read from their take on management versus leadership. It reads, management and leadership are not synonyms. Managers plan, organize, staff, lead, and control. They may or may not be effective in influencing their subordinates. Let's chew on that for a second. So you mean folks who are in these positions may not be effective in influencing their subordinates or team members to set and achieve goals. Why is that? That is because, borrowing a quote from John C. Maxwell, the true measure of leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. The higher the ability that you have to lead, the higher the lid on your potential. In other words, leadership is what propels you to excellence. It is what propels you to be able to influence above the level of position. Coming into a firm, you are only equipped with position. And John calls that level one. At level one, you've got the position. And people follow because they have to. So if one is a manager and one stays at level one, that's it. There's nothing else. Imagine people following you because they had to for your entire tenure in that firm. That would be awful. And that's why we need to rise above just managing to actually leading. And your ability to lead, your ability to influence beyond position has to be earned. There are certain characteristics that make you a great leader. And these were talked about in a book by my mentor, John C. Maxwell. It's called The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. Quite an interesting book. And some of the characteristics of a great leader are mentioned here: character, charisma, commitment, communication, competence, courage, discernment, focus, generosity, initiative, listening, passion, positive attitude, problem solving, relationships, responsibility, security. Only secure leaders give power to others. A lot of managers that are not leaders as well are fearful in giving their people information, in letting their people know what is happening in the firm because they are not secure. Those are not true leaders. Self-discipline, servanthood, teachability, and vision. Great book, highly recommended. But when you take a look at these qualities, you see that they have a bend to them. They are very people-oriented, very people-specific. So when you deal with terminology like this that surrounds leadership, it becomes very clear. In order to lead, you must be leading people. You don't lead systems. You don't lead processes, procedures, guidelines. No, you don't lead those. You manage those. You manage them so they stay straight and the same without deviation. Think about it like quality. In the area of quality of a product, service, or result, think about a control chart. You manage that control chart. You manage the aspect of quality, but you do not lead quality. You lead people. You manage processes, procedures, guidelines, endeavors, not people. Let's read a little bit more from Plunket, Attner, and Allen. It goes further to say the manager who gives orders and explicit instructions to experienced people, for instance, is not leading, but actually impeding productivity. Have you ever heard the term, let me get out of your way so that you can do your job? That is leadership. Knowing when to get out of the way so people can do their job. Knowing when to let the rock stars on the team get on with it. Take yourself out of the way. That's leadership. Knowing when to do that. Knowing when to jump in and help. That's leadership. Knowing when to ask the question, how can I help? What do you need me to remove? Which impediments should I remove for you? And that's why the world of Agile is catching like wildfire, because it espouses the people part of the equation. It's all about human interaction versus the processes and the tools. We value these things over all of that paperwork. We value speaking to each other. We value collocation. We value hearing good ideas and shooting down on no good ideas. That is what leadership is. And if a lot of managers can combine the ability to manage process, procedures, and guidelines with the ability to influence, with the ability to empathize with people, with the ability to understand how to move people forward, if only that could be the case. Wow. Those folks will be knocking it out of the park. They'll be a 10 as a leader, combining great process and procedural management skills with the ability to influence people positively. You heard some of the things from the book by my mentor, John C. Maxwell. If those properties, those skills are combined, wow, how good would it be? You know, there's a quote from Steve Jobs. I'll paraphrase it, but it goes something like this. Management is making people do what you want them to do. But leadership is making people do what they never even imagined they could ever do. Wow. Beating someone over the head with a stick, or maybe not that far, maybe just ushering them through the room and pushing them around, versus opening up their mind, blowing their minds, because they never even imagined they could do that. That is leadership. And that is what we should aspire to be as leaders. People who enable people expand their minds to places unknown, to places they never even imagined they could get to. They didn't even conceive that they could do those things. What a profound quote from Steve Jobs. That's what I'm talking about. That is leadership. Let me read for you here another quote from a thought leader in the industry of management and leadership. You might have heard of Tom Peters. I'm going to read for you a quote from his definition of leadership. He says this: I'm a charlatan because the reality is leadership in the 21st century AD is exactly what it was in 21st century BC. Watch this. Leadership is about the development, the inducement of people to grow, to go way beyond where they believed they could go. That mapped smack dab in line with Steve Jobs' quote. Leadership is about the development, the inducement of people to grow, to go way beyond where they believe they could go. Nothing has changed. I'm going to write a book soon that's called Nothing Has Changed. Of course, the world is very different in the age of the internet, but they thought the same thing, to take out some words that I won't repeat on this channel. When the cars came along, they thought the same thing when the trains came along. They thought the same thing when the canals came along. But the leadership thing, and he goes on. And this is a free PDF on Tom's site. And great quote there by another great thought leader in this space of management versus leadership. By the time you can take a team member, a follower, and get them from where they are, not to where you think they should be, not to where the team member thinks they should be, but far beyond what they ever imagined, way beyond where they even thought they could go. That is leadership at its best. And I encourage everyone who is in any form of management to juxtapose these two and think about them in greater detail. So you can see two sides of the coin here. You can see a boss drives the employee, a leader coaches them. A boss depends on authority, a leader depends on goodwill. A boss inspires fear, a leader generates enthusiasm, and so on and so forth. And it goes on and on. But we have a similar breakdown in a well-known book. Some of you on this channel have copies of the book. It's called the Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide. And this is a text I will also borrow from here just to give you a better idea of management versus leadership. It is on page 64. It says, the words leadership and management are often used interchangeably. Tell me more about that. However, they are not synonymous. The word management is more closely associated with directing another person to get from one point to another using a known set of expected behaviors. In contrast, leadership involves working with others through discussion or debate in order to guide them from one point to another. Now, if we go a little bit deeper, we see a comparison, and I'm going to share this comparison with you so that you've got a good visualization of it. It is something you will never forget. So, leadership, Steve Jobs' quote, making people do what they never even imagined. That's leadership. Management, making people do what you want them to do, what you think they should do. It's according to the book. You signed up for this. Do it. Follow the rules. Follow the book. Follow it to the T. Leadership says, no, hold on. Innovate. Blow your own mind by doing what you never even thought you could do, by breaking that record you never even thought you could even break, by doing the things that you haven't even ever conceived, by creating a system that you never even imagined. That is what leadership is. Steve Jobs talks about this in his book. In one of the books, he talks about a software they were developing, and this developer needed to create software that drew rectangles with rounded edges. And this individual argued and argued and argued until Steve said, come with me for a second. Let me show you why you need to do this. Take a look at cars outside. Take a look at cars on the street. And he proceeded to take him out, showing him the cars on the street and how squares and rectangles with rounded edges were all over the place. Showed the man all of this stuff that was in his head, took him back into the building and showed him the windows and everything and said, look, you need to make this happen. There's no way we can do without it. The developer said, no, there's no way. Okay, let me go back and think. I don't really see any way this could happen. The following day, as Steve was in the conference room, this developer comes in, and he's a well-known name in the space of Apple, but he comes in and he's all excited. Why? Because the software that he swore could not draw those rectangles with rounded edges was now drawing perfect rectangles with perfectly rounded edges. Talk about making people do what they never even imagined they could do. Just the previous day, he argued and argued and argued. It wasn't possible until Steve took him out and showed him why he needed to make it possible. And he did. That is what leadership is. Now, the flip side of this, to talk about this word right here, would have beaten that poor employee over the head with a stick, would have browbeaten him, probably derided him, and made him feel like a complete idiot. But instead, Steve chose a different approach to convince him, to induce him. I like that word by Tom Peters, the inducement, to get them to really believe, yes, there's capacity to grow and expand, even beyond what I know right now. That is the leadership factor. Let's take a look at this breakdown based on the PMI's Chapter 3, Leadership versus Management. Management is many things: directing, maintaining, focusing on systems and structure, and relying on control. Now, let's compare management versus leadership. Management, direct, positional power. Remember, I told you level 1 in John C. Maxwell's book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, is positional. It's all about position. That's my position. That's my title. That's what I was brought into the company to do, level 1. You will not go any further than level 1 if you do nothing other than manage. If you do nothing other than rely on positional power. You need to get to level 2, which is permissions, where people follow because they want to, because you have earned it to some degree. You are a likable person. You've got the ready smile. You've got that charm going on. You've got that understanding factor, even if you don't have the charm. You understand that we're all people trying to get to the other side. We're meant to help each other. Have a servanthood, servant leader idea. That is what gets you to level 2. All right. So taking a look at management, all these things are level 1. They will not get you any further than level 1. They will not get you to level 2. They'll not get you to level 3, level 4, or even level 5. They'll keep you on the positional level. And that's why if you are a project manager or a manager by title, you got to add the leadership fix to the mix. Add the leadership fix to the mix. What is the leadership fix? Management, direct, leadership, guide, influence, collaborate, guide. Guiding is not beating people over the head. It's not calling them stupid. Influence, the true measure of leadership is influence. When we talk about solving problems, we talk about collaborate or problem solve. That's let's get together, let's sit down, let's have a discussion. Let's interact, let's rub minds together to come up with a line of best fit. Because I know I cannot do it on my own. I like a quote by Wintour, who recently on Masterclass came out with a phenomenal lesson on leadership. She says, "You are nothing without the team.